Whew. It's been a while since I've done this. So about a month ago, I returned from my trip from Australia, which was a bit premature, but we'll get into that. But in this video, I'm going to be going through all these different sectors from my experience all the way to advice I have for people who are going on a year abroad or who are interested in a year abroad. But it was an incredible time and I'm really excited to share all the stories. Well, it's been about 9 months since I made my last video, and it was just before I was going to Australia, just as I was finishing my second year at Loughborough. The second year in Loughborough ended about mid-June, and by mid-July, I was on my way to Australia. It was the 8th of July that I left, and I spent 4 days in Singapore, the first time I'd ever left Europe, the first time I'd done a solo travel for a country that's pretty far away. And Singapore was incredible, completely blew me away. And I did make a return there when my mum visited in November. But the first time seeing Singapore, the skyline, the size of the buildings with the banks and the hotel, incredible place, and I recommend it to anyone. But at the end of the day, you're watching this to hear the story about the year abroad and Australia, so I'll go straight into that. I arrived in Australia on the 14th of July, and I was lucky because I had a connection, and many of you will if you're coming from Loughborough University. I had a connection with me that was going to Curtin University in Perth as well. She had already made a friend out there, another one from the UK, but this initial group of 3 that formed in the first few days quickly grew into this huge group of exchange students that all knew each other. They were all in the same boat and all wanted to experience WA and Australia as much as possible. Like me, some were there for half the year, but some were also there for the whole year, and Australia is the other way around, so they start their studying in July, and then it will, the second semester would start in February and go on to something like May. And we all came from different backgrounds, and in the end there was probably a group of about 12 of us, a main group of 12 of us that formed, in which we went on incredible road trips. A very international group. We had UK, Italy, Spain, Philippines, USA, Canada. I'm probably missing a few as well, but we also knew people from Denmark, more from the UK, all over the world, and that's what made it really an incredible experience. And I will get into the academics and my personal experience in a little bit, but when people ask what was the highlight, what was the main key experience of not just Australia but the whole 7 months in general, because I was away for 7 months, I say it's the first road trip. The first road trip, there was about 11 of us, and we went all the way up to Exmouth, which is right at the top on the coast of WA. It was amazing. It really solidified the group. It's the first time we really got out of Perth and decided to explore elsewhere. And for me, I'd never really done a road trip like that. It was in camper vans. You've got 6 of us in a camper van, 5 in another, and just memories I will remember forever. And that is one of the main recommendations I have for people who are going to do a year abroad, is that you are going to make memories. And usually this is a once in a lifetime experience. You're never really going to have the freedom of going to a country with not too much expectation, not too much reliability on your shoulders. And that's what made it incredible. Just as I'm going onto my own experience, I want to talk about my mentality going into Perth. As you noticed, I didn't make any videos out there, and to be honest, I took a little bit of a break from most things, and I'm really happy I did that. I really appreciate I did that. I felt like I'd worked quite hard in the first 2 years at Loughborough, especially in order to get this Australia year abroad, as it is quite competitive in Loughborough. I just spent my time out there to take a break from the YouTube, mainly to take a break from studying a lot. Obviously we still had to study out there, that was the main key part of it, but you only had to pass. So this would be one of the main things I talk about. When you do a year abroad, anywhere, you only need to pass. So in Australia, you needed to get 50 or above. It didn't matter if you got 90, it didn't matter if you got 51. You just needed to pass. Pass is pass. So my goal and the goal for many other people who are coming from the UK year abroad system was just to pass, because there's not much of an incentive to excel really, and for me it made sense to take the experiences of Australia and WA specifically over trying to get like an 80 and get a 60 instead, because at the end of the day it both says the same thing on the certificate. So to sum that first bit up, if you're someone who's looking at a year abroad, considering a year abroad, maybe comparing a year abroad to a placement, which I'll get onto in another video by the way, I'll get into the finer details of it and also include the 6+6, which is what I've been doing. But if you are someone who's looking at a year abroad and you're really interested in the experience, or if you're really interested in traveling, then this is something I would certainly recommend, because it gives you the freedom to do it. And now, as I said, for me, I took a break in a lot of things, which was evident through the inconsistency on the YouTube channel, which is coming back by the way. But one of the main things that really came back into my life when I went to Australia, and it was something I slightly expected, was cricket. I hadn't spoken about cricket much on the channel. Obviously I've made the series called Diary of an Average Footballer, which has also taken a break because I didn't actually play any football out in Australia, but I did play cricket out there, and it was one of the best cricketing experiences of my career. I've been playing cricket since a really young age. When I was younger I had ambitions to go pro, and I'll get more into this into another video, but for me, it was almost like a dream come true to play cricket in Australia or play cricket abroad in any sense. I played for a team called the Victoria Park Redbacks, which is a local team to the university, and I was able to have experiences in cricket which I never thought I'd have. I played against England professionals. I had an incredible coach, which I'll get into in that other video. If you're interested, then stick around, make sure you subscribe to the channel because that will be coming soon. And to put a long story short, for me, it's turned my career around in cricket. It's brought me back to loving the game, which is the most important thing. And for me, how that links to is a year abroad worth it. If you're considering Loughborough University, or if you're a current Loughborough University student, it's very likely you have a sport that you're passionate about. And so let's say it's football, for example, and you're considering doing a year abroad in somewhere like Japan or somewhere like Europe, but that experience of playing that sport abroad is something that can completely change your perspective on your career, and it will change you as a player. I can guarantee that. My confidence as a batsman since facing the pace and the bounce in Australia, coming back to the UK, it's completely changed. And there's something not to be underestimated, and especially if you compete in AU in your sport, then I would take the opportunity of a year abroad to really change your game, because it can have that effect, and that's from first-hand experience. Obviously earlier I talked about the first road trip, but we actually did two in the end. 11 of us again, and this time we went south down to a place called Esperance. Now, for any of you that are considering going to Australia at some point in your life, which is a lot of people go to the East Coast. Now, I'm not saying don't go to the East Coast, because I went to the East Coast too and it was incredible, and I will get on to that. The West Coast is often ignored. When I was staying in hostels in the East Coast, I met a lot of people and they're like, yeah, I'm going from Melbourne, I'm going up to Brisbane. But I'm like, well, you're forgetting about the West Coast. And for someone who'd experienced it in a group setting, the drive up to Exmouth in the first road trip and the drive down and across to Esperance in the second road trip, these places are incredible. They're hidden gems in the world. WA isn't very populated, especially outside of Perth. So when you're driving through these places, you're driving through these long roads of desert, especially when you go north. When you went south, there was a bit more trees. You saw a lot of kangaroos. And the beaches in these pictures that I'm showing you, the hikes that we did were just stunning. Now, a part that a lot of you will be interested in, and especially when you're applying, this is the sort of thing that you want to know about, is the academics. Now, academics in Australia, or at least in Curtin University, because that's the only experience I have out there, was quite different to Loughborough in the sense that it was a lot more online. Even one of my modules, which I'd never experienced this before, was completely online. The lectures were completely online. You'd have the tutorial in person, but a Monday morning when the lecture was completely online. The others were all in person. The lectures were all in person. I completed 3 modules whilst I was out there, all to do with economics and finance. I'm studying PP in Loughborough, focusing on the economics now. But even a lot of the exams were all online. Our final exams were in person. But some of them were only 20%, 30%, maybe a maximum of 40% of the grade. A lot of the exams were during the semester, not at the end of the semester, and they were mostly online, you know, small quizzes, Excel spreadsheets, stuff like this. But apart from that, Australia was very similar. Obviously, same language is spoken. As I said, it's pass or fail. So you don't need to reach for 70, 80, 90. If you want to take the experience, then you can do that, and that is what is so good and flexible about a year abroad. But you still need to guarantee you get that pass, which is, you know, something you don't need to underestimate. You can't just turn up. You can't just not turn up to an exam, or you can't just do an exam late. You still need to get your 50. You still need to work, but it's a lot more relaxed than I found it in Loughborough. And if you're a Loughborough student specifically looking at Curtin, and this is going to be a very niche group of you, but there might be some of you out there. Perth is a bit more of a lively place than Loughborough. Obviously, Loughborough's a small town. You've got a bit more going on in Perth. And for me, I took this a little bit of time to explore a little bit more and do a couple nights out. Stuff I'd always kind of said I'm not that into. To be honest, it's still something I'm not massively into, but it was worth the try. You know, going out for Halloween and stuff like this. You got North Bridge, you got a local place called Varsity, which I enjoyed it in there. You do pub quizzes, you got a Thursday night deal with drinks and stuff. Or if you're someone like me who might have spent their time in Loughborough as a bit more disciplined, which isn't an easy thing to do. Loughborough has fantastic sport facilities, and you can easily get into a fantastic routine with your fitness and your academics and your health. And my time doing a year abroad was more relaxed, and it was almost like a social crash course. Something I'd say that I really needed, something that I've seen massive improvement in my confidence when going into social situations, meeting new people, and at the end of the day, that is a skill. That is a skill that's going to be needed in the working world. That is a skill that's going to be needed whether you're going into sports, because at the end of the day, networking is the most important thing. And if you can't socialise, you're not going to be able to network that well. If you're wondering about how you can maintain your routine and your discipline going elsewhere, sometimes that shouldn't be the ultimate focus, especially if you're going somewhere for 6 months, where you can really test limits around your weaknesses. And that was fantastic for me. Another thing included in the academic section is accommodation. A lot of people were very concerned about accommodation when they go on a year abroad, and I was slightly when I went there. I was lucky enough to get on-campus accommodation, well, slightly off-campus accommodation, but accommodation linked to Curtin University. It's through this whole company called Unilodge. I believe they do accommodation linked to many universities within the whole of Australia. My accommodation wasn't the best. My mates paid slightly more, and I wish I did, because they got much better accommodation than I did. So if you are going to Curtin Uni and you do stay in Kurrajong village, do not take because I took an international student's house, which was the cheaper option, but it was pretty crap. There was 8 of us sharing a tiny weeny kitchen. It wasn't worth it. It was not a good idea, but it was all right. It was all right. You know, I could stay there, I could live there. It was fine. If you want a better cooking experience and stuff like that, I wouldn't choose what I chose. It can be a little bit daunting about how to get accommodation when going on a year abroad, but I recommend that you just research it, get it done, work out how local students do it. Is there something linked to the uni? If there's not something linked to the uni, you're going to have to look at renting. You're going to have to look at renting in the city. Maybe something like flatmates in Australia is a useful thing. But if you have any specific questions about that, stick them in the comments below. Stick your scenarios in the comments below and I'll try to help you out. And finally, linking to that point is my advice. A lot of you have got your offers to go on a year abroad. I know one of my friends has got an offer to go to Japan. He's going to be playing football out there, which is incredible. And if you have got an offer, congratulations. If you haven't, don't be down about it. You've still got time after you graduate if you want to go on a year abroad or something. But a lot of the stuff I did was something that I could have done without the academics. It just meant that might have had to do part-time work out there or something else like that. So it's not over if you haven't got an offer. But if you have got an offer, well done. My advice is specifically for people who are doing 6+6 in this sense. And that's because I am meant to be in Australia right now. Would you believe that? I am meant to be out there right now. That's why I said at the start of the video that is ended prematurely. I'm meant to be in Sydney right now working a finance internship, but all of that fell through. So I was, and this is, I'm going to put a long story short, I was on a student visa. When I went out to Australia, you need to get a visa to go to Australia. Check if your country that you're going to, if you need to get a visa or not. It's more than likely you do, and it's simply just an application, but get it done ahead of time, because this is the problem I had. And especially if you're doing a half and half and you're planning to do the second half, which will be the working half in the country, then please listen to this advice. As I said, I was on a student visa. I was studying from July to November, but my student visa ended on the 31st of January. Mid-January I was going to start working in Sydney, but I couldn't work full-time on my working visa because the working visa only allows 48 hours of work every fortnight, which isn't full-time. In order to start working full-time, I needed to check if a working holiday visa would be accepted by the work I was going to be doing in Sydney, which it was. But there was complications, because for the first working holiday visa, you need to be abroad when you apply, you need to be abroad when it's accepted. And I was in Brisbane at the time, and I was looking to apply, and it became apparent very quickly that I was going to have to go abroad. Because of some prior commitments and some prior arrangements that I'd made, I couldn't go abroad until early January. So you could see how it was getting tight into the start date of work. And then that's when I went to New Zealand, which wasn't planned at all, and that's why I'm wearing this t-shirt right now. Now let's look at the positives of this. I went to Auckland for a week, and I extended my time out there because I didn't get a visa in time, to Queenstown. Both, especially Queenstown, the most incredible places and my favourite places. Queenstown was my favourite place on the trip. I did hikes, I saw the most beautiful scenery I've ever seen in New Zealand. If you go to Australia, New Zealand is a must go. I almost didn't go. If I didn't have these visa complications, I wouldn't have gone to New Zealand, and that would have been a major regret, knowing what I know now. On the other hand, on the negative side, I applied for my working holiday visa in early January, and I didn't get it accepted, and time kept going on and on and on, and it came to about mid to late January, and it came to a point where I was like, well, I'm going to have to leave Australia on the 31st of January because that's when my student visa leaves. I've still got more to see. I still want to see Sydney. Sydney was the only city I hadn't really seen at that point. I'd seen Melbourne, I'd seen Brisbane, I'd seen Perth. So I went back to Australia, knowing that if my visa were to be accepted, I'd have to fly back out again, which would obviously cost money, which I was running out of at this point because I was constantly staying in hostels. But I went to Sydney, I stayed for a week in Sydney, I stayed a little bit of time in Tasmania, I went back to Sydney, and it came to the 31st of January, and that was it. And I booked my flights home, and would you believe it, I still haven't actually got my working holiday visa. It's been about 60+ days. I do not know what's happened. but I haven't got it. So the advice is, from that crazy story, despite all the amazing travelling I was able to do, and I still was able to see the whole of Australia, I missed out on a working opportunity, which would be to complete my certificate in Australia. Be prepared for that. If that is part of your plan, be prepared, because you need to set up yourself a working holiday visa. As soon as your studies end, get abroad, get it done, because it's changed plans for me. For me, I'm still able to get my certificate. The work doesn't have to be abroad. The work doesn't have to be in the same country as your study. If you do a study abroad in France, the work doesn't mean it has to be in France. The work doesn't have to be in the UK. The work can be whatever you want. The work doesn't have to be graduate level. The work doesn't have to be paid. It just needs to be work. The work can be volunteering. But obviously it's ideal if you can get something graduate level. It's ideal if you can get something that's going to help to your future. I'm personally still on the search. I'm looking for places, preferably to do with something that will be similar to the finance intern I was going to do, something similar to what I've been mainly focusing on, economics. I've got backup plans. I'm going to make sure I get that certificate, so do not worry about that too much. If you're doing a 6+6, just make sure you pass the studying, and the other part, there's backups if it doesn't go through, if you can't get internships in time. So that is everything. It's been an up and down 7 months abroad. I've been home for a month now. I've got some part-time work. I'm doing all right, and I'm going back to YouTube. But overall, ignoring the roller coaster at the end, I've seen places I've always wanted to see. I've had experiences I've always wanted to have. But I mean, it's a lot to cover, and there's a lot of questions around year abroad, and everybody's scenario is slightly different. So if you do have any questions, please put them in the comments or DM me on Instagram. My Instagram will be in the description. I'm also putting my email on the YouTube channel, so if you have any business inquiries, be open to contact me. And even if you don't have any more questions, put your experiences in the comments below. If you've got a year abroad coming up, if you did a year abroad years ago and you want to tell people about your experience, this is the place to do it. If you're current or aspiring Loughborough students, please check out my other videos. I've got loads of stuff, right from when I was a fresher, days in the life, all the way through to information and advice about being a Loughborough student. But it's nice to be back. It's nice to be making these videos again. And I'll see you all soon in my final year, I imagine. Goodbye.